Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Randomised Gaming. And in today's video, I am going to be your commentating host, Random Gamer Riven. Now, I'm going to try something a bit different in today's video. What I'm going to do is actually commentate over one of our long plays, but I'm going to do two versions of this video. So today's version will be the commentated long play, which will only be at 1440p. And tomorrow's version will be an uncommentated version, and that will be at 4K. So I'm going to see how that works doing double videos. Ideally, what I would ideally like, which usually doesn't yet seem to have functioned for, is for me to have an ability to add a separate audio file to our long plays. So effectively, you can have a commentated audio and you can just turn it on and off, which would be really handy and a feature I would really like YouTube to add in the future, where basically you have your video, then you can add a commentated audio. So if you want to watch it without the audio, the commentation, they can do. If you want to add the audio, they can do that. At the minute, we have to do it over two videos unless there's some really slick way you can possibly do it. Although I don't think that type of feature is available, but if anyone knows how, please do let me know. As it is, we just have to upload two separate videos. So without further ado, I'm going to actually run this video and allow you to watch me playing through Capcom vs SNK 2. This is a 1 credit clear. And this is me playing as Evil Ryu and M.Bison. So this is Capcom vs SNK 2. This is the Gamecube version. Now, first off, you'll notice I've recorded this at 480p, and that's because I've been using a program called Swish that allows you to force the games on the GameCube into 480p or 480i and a few other interesting resolutions. And it's a really handy program, certainly for PAL games that didn't get progressive scan, because what I've learned in the past few weeks is that all PAL GameCube hardware that has the digital output supports progressive scan, but it was removed from virtually, I say virtually, all the games. As I've discovered, there are quite a few games that actually have the NTSC code on the disc. And surprisingly, there's about 7-8 games so far that you can actually boot into progressive scan on just a stock GameCube as long as you've got a component lead. And it's possible to do, you can use like a program like Swish, but it is possible to use a very standard other program to actually force a few games into progressive scan as well, which is quite interesting. That aside, I'm not going to say any more on forcing today in this video, as I'm going to be commentating on the actual playthrough. So this is Capcom vs SNK 2. Now this is a Nintendo GameCube port. This is the European version, which was released in 2002, and the subtitle in-game is Mark of Millennium 2001, which was the Western subtitle, I believe. Strangely, it has Millionaire Fighting 2001 on the box, which was the Japanese subtitle, so I'm not really sure why they changed the subtitle. That was a bit of a strange one. The original Dreamcast version and arcade revisions were released in 2001, and I have to admit I do find the Dreamcast version better than the GameCube. One, for the joypad, which are much easier to use. Second being the GameCube doesn't quite support the original resolution of the game, and so some of the sprites look a lot more blocky in the GameCube version. Now, the big thing with the GameCube version is that it had the easy operation. It was called EO, and that stands for easy operation. On the back of the box, they subtitled it Extreme Offensive because Capcom at the time didn't think saying easy operation would be that trendy. However, if you've ever used the easy operation mode, you'll know it is utterly broken and completely nerfs the player character and makes it almost utterly unplayable, which is infuriating because I remember an Edge review that said, oh, it takes out all the difficulty because it makes it so easy to pull off the fireballs. No, if you use the easy operation, basically all the moves are stuck on the C stick, and punches and kicks are like L and R trigger only, so you can't perform half the nifty combos you could do in the standard controls. So I always use arcadism. I actually always adjust the controls slightly because the default scheme's a bit crap. Basically, the triggers on the GameCube pad are rubbish, so I actually set the triggers L and R to the mediums because they have such a delay on them. I set B to light punch, Y to heavy punch, A to light kick, X to heavy kick. That's my setup. So there I go, straight in with a super finish, and I'm going to be doing an awful lot of super finishes in this video because I want to get one to the two secret bosses. Now, basically, there are actually like 3 different endings. You can fail spectacularly and basically not fight an additional boss at the end. You can then fight the weaker bosses, which are just Ragul from the King of Fighters series and normal Akuma. Or, if you do really well, you end up fighting Shin Akuma, or Ultimate Ragul as he was known in the Western version, and God Ragul as he was known in the Japanese version. Now, to do that, you need to make sure... So, the criteria online, no one's ever quite seems to have specified exactly what you need to do to get the best criteria. There's a few things that pretty much guarantee it. You basically need over 1,000 points when you clear the last standard fight. You need to have fought the sub-boss, that is M.Bison or Geese Howard along the way. And you need to have got at least one dramatic KO or finest KO. The name changed again depending on which version you've released on. So you can see here, I'm literally going all out. Now, dramatic and finest KOs, weirdly, again, is another thing where the criteria has never quite been fully explained. For the most part, you can get them by basically countering a super with either a special or another super. But unfortunately against the AI, it actually makes it surprisingly tricky because the AI doesn't... special moves are not too bad to try and counter. Super moves are a whole different kettle of fish because they're so rare to pull them off. You basically end up having to delay the fight in order to wait for the AI to perform the moves for you to get the finest KO. And in this one, I didn't think I was going to get the finest or dramatic KO. Finished because I didn't seem to get one. Although I may have got one during the Ryu's... I can't remember the Shadow Super because I'm playing as Evil Ryu. Akuma's Death Punch. This name's just suddenly escaped me for some reason. It's Hellish Death Strike. Basically, I managed... You will see when I get the finest KO, and it literally is the skin of the teeth thing. So basically, Capcom vs SNK 2 has is fairly easy. I think the Gamecube version may have had the difficulty slightly nerfed a little bit, but you do want to go for combos. The main selling point of this system is the groove system, which is actually, I really like the groove system because it does create a challenge. Basically, you get points awarded for hitting, doing combos, and doing specials and supers. The bit higher combos and super moves you do, the more points you get. You also get points for doing a complete run, and that is not losing a fighter. So technically, the game's slightly easier if you have a 4-point ratio. Character. Admittedly, this is interesting, is this game is actually missing you can only have 3 characters in this one, unlike the original Capcom vs SNK, which allowed you to have up to 4. Part of the reason for that, I suspect, is because Capcom vs SNK was quite unbalanced with 4 characters, in that it was quite hard for a 4-point character to actually beat 4 1-point characters because they couldn't quite tie up the damage ratio correctly. So I think that's why they adjusted it a bit. The damage ratio is still a little bit experimental. There's still some flaws with this one, but it's quite good fun. I do like the fact they redrew Bryson's sprite for this one. I think this sprite actually looks better than his Alpha Series one. Not so keen on the Ryu and Ken sprites for this one. And Chun-Li was quite lazily just an import Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Although interestingly, in the original game she used her Alpha sprite. In this one she used her Third Strike sprite. But either way, it's not ideal. It'd been nice if they'd redrawn every character sprite. There are too many imports from other games, should we say. A lot of them use... Like Blank uses Alpha Sprite in some of the other games, whereas Ken and Ryu were redrawn. Although I don't think their redraws for Ken and Ryu in this were that good. So see here, I'm going for high combo damage. And making sure to get those counter hits as well. Basically any attack that gives you high score you want to do. So there, 8 points for doing a 5-hit combo. Great counter, super move. Basically you always want to finish with combos, super moves, or special moves. Ideally super move combos. And in Evil Ryu's case, actually doing the Hellish Death Strike. That is light punch towards, light kick, heavy punch. And I do a few. Is actually a really good way of getting loads and loads of points. Now the AI in this is actually quite easy. It's also quite flawed in places. It's weird. So there we go, the Hellish Death Strike. the final boss said, God Ragul has some weird AI issues where you can Dragon Punch the hell out of him, but if you try and jump him, he will absolutely murder you. So you do have to know where the AI flaws are a little bit in this. And for some reason, the AI does have an issue with the Dragon Punch where you can literally just constantly Dragon Punch them in the corner. And this is actually set on the default difficulties as well. So the AI, I think, they were quite lenient in these later Capcom games with the AI. I think purely to try and get people playing a bit more, because this is quite a short game to play. It's only a few rounds, and I think the issue with some of the earlier Capcom fighting games was the AI was too hard and would infuriate people. I mean, you look at Mortal Kombat as well, which had really, really difficult AI, which made it very unpleasant to play, so a lot of players would just give up in the end. So you see there I'm already at 977 points, groove points, and keeping your groove score high is really important. Taking damage reduces it, using a credit loses loads. I also think if you lose a credit you can't then fight the super bosses, but I can't quite be sure on that one. It's been a while. I do know you can fight God Ragul from, or Ultimate Ragul from a fresh save, and the same with Shin Akuma. There's lots of The problem with the internet is no one's ever quite figured out exactly everything needed and all the various things for the finest KO, or really quite got down how to fight the super bosses. So I've seen quite a lot of criteria where I thought I would fight them and I didn't, and a few times where I've seen over the years thought I wouldn't be fighting the super bosses and all of a sudden I was. You pretty much guaranteed to need to get a dramatic KO or finest KO, however you want to call it, to do them, and that's probably the hardest part. Winning with supers is relatively easy. The other thing is you must get the first hit in the match a number of times. You also mustn't receive the first hit. So basically you either need a set number of first hits and you mustn't take a set number of first hits. Basically you always need to be the one landing the first blow, because if you take too many you won't fight the sub bosses or the final secret bosses. So basically, one thing I find with Capcom vs SNK 2, just be really aggressive. The game rewards players who are aggressive. The AI is not that defensive too badly, and as long as you're aggressive or wait for the counters, that's the best way to do it. So Terry Bogard here is actually quite a good one to do a super on, because you can counter his special moves quite easily, especially his Burning Knuckle, because he's got quite a long wind up. And you can counter it sublimely if you get it right. So that's quite an easy one to get a dramatic KO on. But yeah, literally having the super bar charge, and you're literally just waiting for the AI to perform the right move. So here is the first criteria towards the secret boss met. I'm fighting the sub boss, and in this case I'm going to be fighting Geese Howard, which I think is pretty much a guaranteed means you fight Shin Akuma. No, you fight Akuma. You fight either of the Akumas. I think it's always, whichever boss you fight here, you fight the alternative, but I'm not entirely sure if that's always the case. There are some weird variables with this that I've never been quite able to figure out. There's no cut and dry way to know which of the two bosses you're going to be fighting. Or at least I can't find good enough documentation. I've always left it pretty much open that it seems very random, but what does annoy me is the fact you did need a finest dramatic KO, which sometimes is entirely dependent on the AI, and I really wish just getting a set enough higher groove point score was a guarantee, because when you start getting into the 15,000 marker, really the game should be giving you the straight up, hey, you're just doing really well. So here you go, so there's a 15 hit combo, see their vitality max. And you want the complete bonus, so again, complete bonus as well. That goes up to about 100 points to complete bonus, I think, in the end. But basically, you lose the complete bonus if you lose you lose your first fighter in the fight. So basically, you cannot lose a single fight. So if you've got 3 fighters and you lose 1, you won't get the complete bonus. And that's one of the few groove point awards that increments each time. So if you lose someone, then you lose the increments in it. I must admit, I actually prefer Evil Ryu in a lot of these later Capcom games to the original Ryu. I always liked how Ryu was in Super, but they kind of nerfed him quite a bit and took back his special fireball and stuff, so I kind of prefer Evil Ryu in the later ones. So as you'll notice up until this point, although I've got quite a few level 3 super finishes now, I have not got a dramatic KO. And one thing I should apologise for, because I've been doing some testing captures on the Gamecube, because this is using the digital out port, this signal we're using, I made a mistake of resetting our capture unit back to default and not upping the quality rate. So this is a slightly lower capture rate than we would normally do, which slightly annoyed me, seeing as it was such a good run in the end. But like I said, you'll notice I do not yet have a dramatic KO at this point, so it looked like I would only be fighting standard Akuma. So this is Kim. He does an awful lot of special moves, you'll notice, so he's actually quite a good one to get a dramatic KO on. But you've got to be careful. He's one of the few characters that's quite offensive. He can also, because he's got an airborne attack, you have to watch fly kicks into his body as well. And I do like to do a lot of fly kicks followed by sweeps. And there we go with a dramatic KO, or finest KO finish, it's called in the Japanese version. So yes, that was talk about skin of your teeth moments, and this means that, and there's a complete bonus at 70, this means I will be fighting, in this case, Shin Akuma. Strangely, I did a playthrough again after this, actually on a different setup, and I got to God Ragul. But both of them were from a fresh save, i.e. because I've not been using a save file, because I couldn't be bothered to actually dig up our Capcom vs SNK save file with the characters already unlocked on it. It's somewhere, we've got it. I will dig it up at some point, maybe do a playthrough. Although weirdly, both of the bosses, this is one game where the bosses are brutally hard to fight against, and when you actually play as them, they have been nerfed to Kingdom Come and totally useless. Shin Akuma, I think, is one of the weakest characters in the game because he's been so heavily nerfed. So his boss mode is like quite powerful, menacing. His player character version, utter rubbish. Similar to what they did with Seth in Street Fighter 4. So a lot of these boss fights you have to actually be really defensive on. The AI completely changes, becomes a lot more aggressive, and in God Ragul's case he can absolutely decimate your health bar in seconds with about 3 hits. And bearing in mind I'm a 2-point character as well, so I've got to really keep this on the ball. Now it does get quite tricky to keep all your characters alive against these bosses, so in this case I actually lose Evil Ryu. And here we go, fly kick. Yes, disperse the fireball and punch for the victory. I was hoping to do the super at that point. I didn't actually intend to do that punch at the end. I intended to try and do the super out, but the problem with the Gamecube pad, and this is one of the issues with it, as I'm just holding it here, the D-pad. So the analog pad is great for doing the charge moves, but it's not so good for doing the fireballs. The D-pad on the Gamecube is great for doing the fireballs and dragon punches, not so good for doing the charge moves because it's too small, and often when you roll it, it will incorrectly pick up one of the other inputs. It is too small an input, it's not that wellly designed. The Gamecube pad is not ideal, and as I mentioned at the start, the trigger buttons, L trigger and R trigger, have too much delay and timing issues. They are terrible trigger buttons. They have such delay on them, it's not even funny. As a fighting version goes, this is not the best version of Capcom vs SNK. The graphics aren't quite as good as the Dreamcast version either, because they've had to change the resolution, so there's some slight mistiness and a few other issues. But running this at progressive scan does improve the game quite spectacularly. I was quite surprised how much it does. It does make it look quite a bit better, which is kind of what you expect for a 2D game, but it kind of clears up some of the issues the Gamecube version has with the graphical sprite changes. Admittedly, it still doesn't look anywhere near as good as the Dreamcast version, as the Dreamcast version is the native version. And if you had to get one version of Capcom vs SNK 2, I would always recommend the Dreamcast over any other version first. In fact, as far as it goes, I'd say Dreamcast, probably the Xbox, but some people may prefer the PS2, Problem with the PS2 version is in Europe it was 50 Hz only, so you need to force the PAL version. So yeah, avoid the European version of Capcom vs SNK 2. Personally, I prefer the Xbox One, as that's got much cleaner visuals and uses proper resolution. The GameCube One is probably the weakest due to weakest visuals and weakest control pad as well. It really does hamper the game in some respects. And as I said, I think they slightly reduced the difficulty in the GameCube version as a result. Easy operation is terrible as well. So despite the fact I saw an Edge review that originally the tie-in complained the easy operation ruined the difficulty of the game because you could pull off a fireball with ease, as I said. And actually when I finally got to play this version, I thought, hang on, this easy operation mode is so broken because it weirdly changes all the punches and kicks together. It just prevents you from playing properly. It's just a horrible, horrible mode altogether. So don't use easy operation. So as a Capcom fighting game, this is probably quite a good one. I kind of, in some ways, prefer the original Capcom vs SNK, mainly partly due to the background. I didn't like the 3D backgrounds that much in this one. They didn't quite look as good. Music's not quite as good either compared to Capcom vs SNK, but I think that Capcom vs SNK 2 was a little bit rushed. I also think it was also the last sort of big Capcom fighting game they did prior to Capcom's Street Fighter 4 hiatus, because basically they did Capcom vs SNK 2. I think the only one afterwards was Fighting Jam. I might be not quite correct on that, but basically Fighting Jam, and then that was it. You had the hiatus to Street Fighter 4. But I think this is actually really good, but I do think this one had a few balancing issues. As I said, I didn't like the backgrounds as much. Overall, it is a very good game. It's very playable. It's certainly one of the better fighting games out there. One of the best 2D fighters on the GameCube as well, because there really wasn't much choice. This and Soul Calibur 2 really are probably the best fighters on the GameCube. I suppose you got Bloody Raw. Flash Smash Bros was good on the GameCube as well. I should make mention of that because there's probably people screaming, "Oh, I've got this game, this fighting game. You didn't mention this fighting game." So yeah, there are a couple. There are a few Japanese ones that aren't bad, but as terms of sort of fighting games go, there weren't a huge number on the GameCube, and I suspect that was primarily down to the pad. I suspect this may not have even sold that well on the GameCube, Capcom vs SNK. But there we go. So I hope you enjoyed my little video chat about Capcom vs SNK. Got any questions, please do fire away in the comment section. I'm going to basically wrap it up here, just so it gives me time to say thank you for watching this video, and as always, if you like our content, hit that like button for the video, and please do subscribe. And if you want an uncommented version, that will be coming tomorrow. I've been your host, Random Gamer Riven, and thank you for watching this randomised gaming video, and stay tuned to the channel for more content.
All records are made to be broken. These are the current top team rankings.